It is Ned Talk, and I can hardly believe that we're back here again on a Thursday night, especially since I keep doing that. I keep thinking somebody will fire me, but it hasn't happened yet, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that. It's Ned Talk, your local live sports talk show. We're on 1 hour before the Chiefs pregame show. That means that it starts in 1 hour. The professionals take over, and us slackers that sit around here and talk sports for fun, well, we'll be gone by then. I'm Joe Westen. That's Ned Reynolds. Ned, how are you?
Doing just great, thanks. A beautiful day in the Ozarks. What more could you want? And the Chiefs playing tonight in the only game in the country. That's what it's all about.
Yes, absolutely. Alex Scott is with us. Alec, how are you?
Doing well. That offseason flew by, didn't it? It feels like we were just in here wrapping up the Super Bowl matchup, and all of a sudden everyone's back. That's the NFL's intention. They don't want you to think they ever went away.
You know, I always say that the NFL does it right because some of the other sports, especially hockey and basketball, it seems like you don't really get an off season from those sports. It seems like they stop and then they're immediately going back at it again. To me, football's like Christmas because there's just that anticipation that you get because there's a long enough off season. You're like, yeah, I'm ready for this to start. I'm ready for football. I'm ready to go at it again.
Well, Joe, the NFL, as Alec just pointed out, is brilliant in their marketing plan because they keep it before the public in every possible circumstance. Mm-hmm. The what do they call it? The combine that they have in Indianapolis, that takes up a week and a half. Then they have the draft, and there's all sorts of predictions who's going to be in the draft. Then you have your pre-camp, you have your rookie camp, and all that gets covered, and it's there almost every day. That's a beautiful piece of marketing.
Josh Roberts is with us too. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing great. You know, it's funny you compare. I think the reason that the NFL feels the way that it feels is because there are so fewer games than basketball and baseball and hockey. Mm-hmm. So even though those seasons don't ever seem to end, you know, if you miss a game here and there, it's not that big of a deal. Every game in the NFL is a huge game because you only play 17 of them. And that's part of what I love about it.
So we did have some interesting things happen during the time that we were last on the air, which was about 2 weeks ago. And we were sitting here and discussing sports, and that is one thing that I found very interesting is the Chiefs signed Juju Schuster-Smith back to the roster. What did you think about that move?
Well, I think it's an interesting move in a lot of respects. He's Smith-Schuster's beyond his golden years now.
Yeah.
But he still has the possession of knowledge of what the Chiefs do, and he can help out with the experience with a young receiving core. They also, I'll tell you, this kind of flew under the radar. They have Samaje Perine on their team. And this kid, while, again, he fits into that category of being a little bit beyond his prime, maybe a whole lot beyond his prime, he can still add a play or two as a running back, and he's tough. He's an Oklahoma kid, Cincinnati Bengals and all that. He may not see very much action, but that level of experience of guys who've been down the road and been in the playoffs helps with the younger receiving core because I don't think, and this is, I guess, not a prediction in any way, but I'm not sure that Rashee Rice will be with them the whole season. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Let me just say this. Ned is calling Juju Schuster-Smith over the hill at the age of 27, by the way. Did I have to tell you?
Yeah, but he's taken a lot of hits. You know, he's Southern Cal, and he had the Pittsburgh Steelers all those years, and he had the New England when the New England Patriots cut you before the cuts even have to take place, you have to say, well, I wonder if this guy has anything left in the tank. What do you think, Alec?
Well, it is interesting. He's still so young. He came into Pittsburgh, I believe he was 20 or 21 years old. Mm-hmm. He's coming back into a really good spot because throughout his career, his absolute best years were when the spotlight was not on him. He had a couple years behind Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh, and he thrived because Brown drew so much attention. Juju won his single coverage. Antonio Brown leaves Pittsburgh. Juju becomes the number one receiver. He struggled. Pittsburgh lets him go. He goes to Kansas City and doesn't blow up, but he has a very respectable year, breaks 1,000 yards receiving, has a handful of touchdowns, was a really good piece of the offense behind Travis Kelce, who is eating up all the major attention. Then he goes to New England, and he's the top guy, and now there wasn't much good going on in that entire New England offense, so cut him some slack there, but he struggled again. Yeah. So now he's back in a system where he is not the primary threat. He's got Travis Kelce ahead of him. There's Rashee Rice out there. When he's back, Hollywood Brown. There's a lot of weapons. So I'll be interested to see how they work him in because him and Rashee Rice play a similar role. They're underneath guys. They're not going to be your go deep burners. They've got they've got Worthy and Hollywood Brown for that. So they've kind of got a handful of guys that can do different roles at each spot to kind of give them some backups if someone were to go down or a suspension were to happen. But it really was just the nail in the coffin for Kadarius Toney, because as soon as they bring in a receiver, that was like, well, there's going to be one receiver in the door, there's one receiver going out the door, and I think we all knew who.
Matter of fact, we said that on the air when they signed Smith-Schuster. So long, Kadarius, you're not long with this team. Now he could sign with somebody else. He has a sordid record, in fact, in back of him. New York Giants, he had all those injuries. Chiefs, he had all those injuries. And I wonder about his influence in the clubhouse. But regardless of that, he won't be wearing the red and white.
No.
What do you think, Josh, of the signing of Schuster Smith? If I can say that. That's a tongue twister.
Smith-Schuster.
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 Sells seashells by the seashore.
I think Alec hit it on the head. I think when he's not considered the number one threat, he can do well because the pressure is not as great for him. And I think that this could be a year where we are impressed with what he does. I honestly, when he was with the Chiefs, was not that impressed with what he had done. But that was in that year when they dropped 500 million passes and all that stuff. So they were having a lot of problems anyway. And still won the Super Bowl, didn't they?
Yep.
That was last year.
Yeah, that was last year.
That was last year, and he was not part of the team last year.
Oh, that's right. He wasn't a part of the team.
That was Marquez Valdez Van.
Valdez Scantling.
I can't say these people's names.
Yeah.
I guess everybody needs to be named Smith from now on.
I think it's a good fit, and I think they are planning for Rashee Rice to be missing some games, and I think that's the smart thing to do. I'm excited to see Worthy. I want to see what this guy can do because I think he could be the guy that takes a lot of pressure off of Kelsey and either makes it nearly impossible to stop the Chiefs' passing game or makes it really inconvenient.
And Josh, here is the unknown factor about that. He's certainly an outstanding athlete and one of the quickest on the field. He's very, very fast up and down. Can he hold on to the ball? Now, I don't mean that as a critique, but he's facing D-backs who are not the D-backs he saw in college.
Right.
These are pros, and they know all the tricks in the world of how to really, really disrupt any kind of passing offense.
You mentioned Rashee Rice earlier. They have set his court date for June of 2025, so he should be with the Chiefs all season long.
Well, they moved it from December 9th, that is right, to June now of next year. That's the court date, but it's not the NFL date.
Well, according to the article that our good friend Jake sent us, that the NFL is unlikely to place Rashee Rice on paid leave via the commissioner's exempt list, as the league will decide on a potential suspension once the legal process has concluded, which has kind of been their MO.
Yeah.
So it's next season that you're probably going to have to worry about him getting some playing time. Finding out what's going on.
We'll see.
Well, you never know. The Roger Goodell
case.
could change things up, so things could happen.
Yeah.
You're listening to Ned Talk, your local live sports talk show on 104.7 The Cave, your home for the Kansas City Chiefs in Southwest Missouri. The Chiefs pregame show starts in about 52 minutes right here on The Cave. You're with Ned Reynolds, myself, Joe Westen, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts. We're talking Chiefs. They also, one of the big names that made the Chiefs, I think big names amongst fans, is Carson Steele, who had an impressive last game, had a very impressive last game as the third preseason game happened.
3 years running back for the team that the Missouri State Bears are playing next Saturday, or like in 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
Ball State. It's where he played his final year. He transferred to UCLA, and Steele had a big year at UCLA. He has had a big rookie camp with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a hard runner, a tough runner. In fact, he beat out, I think this is probably fair to say, beat out the rugby player for that position on the team because he has the knowledge of football. The rugby player's a tough kid, but it's rugby he knows and not the subtleties of American football. But Steele can play. He's a good, hard, charging kid, follows his blocking routes very well, and when he gets a full head of steam, he's tough to bring down. It's a good move for them.
She's coming to this game relatively in good shape. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been added to the not on the PUP list, as they call it these days. He is not going to be able to play. Of course, the other big name is Hollywood Brown. It'd be interesting to see with him. He is, what we've heard recently is that he would be back next week to play in the Bengals game. And it's going to be interesting to see that group of receivers on the field together for hopefully more than one play. Ned, do you think this team can be as explosive as it was with Tyreek Hill?
If Henderson, if Hollywood comes through and plays, Marquise Henderson's Oklahoma, and he has the background of a good passing attack. Oklahoma certainly had that. So he has that ability. I question whether or not next week is realistic. That's a collarbone injury he had, and they're tough to deal. Now the Chiefs doctors know exactly what they're doing. The trainers know exactly what they're doing, and I'm sure he is healing to their specifications. But that is still, you can't heal the mind, and when that has happened in the mind, and that's a very, very painful injury, and a tough one to subjugate, so to speak, in your mind. I can take that hit. And then when it happens, oh boy. Anyway, that's beside the point. I will be surprised if he does play next week, but if he does, he certainly has the ability to be the game breaker, yes.
Alec, I think the unquestioned best receiving core in the NFL is the Cincinnati Bengals. Do you think, how does this one the Chiefs have put together this year match up with that one?
Definitely I would take those top two Cincinnati guys, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, likely over either Hollywood Brown, and we don't know about Xavier Worthy, just for the overall aspect of their game. We know what Hollywood Brown's got. He's got speed. We also know this is his third team in 4 or 5 years in the NFL, so he's never quite clicked up to that first-round potential that he's had. So pairing him with another burner and the best talent he's ever had underneath in Travis Kelce, it'll be interesting to see because on the one hand, it's like if not here, then where? On the other hand, I feel like there's been a pattern playing Kansas City over these past couple of years where teams have just decided that you're not going to beat us that way. We will watch you go down the field in 12 plays and score touchdowns if that's what it takes, but you are not going to get into those track meets that Kansas City tended to do in the Tyreek Hill days. They are good enough and have continued to win despite that defensive approach, but I think that more than anything is attributed to some of our what's wrong with Kansas City's offense. And it's like, that's just how teams are playing them. They are willing to give them touchdowns if they're willing to go 12 plays, 14-play drives to get them. Mm-hmm. So this receiving core sure on paper looks better than it did going into last year, but they've got Kelce in the middle. That's been the catalyst for everything. So as long as he's there up to his potential, then the offense is going to go okay. And the receiving core, we'll see as the year goes on. I think Brown is good. Xavier Worthy needs to show what he's got.
Josh, interesting group, as Alec pointed out. You've got two burners on the outer end. You've got Xavier Worthy, Marcos. I can't say anybody's name today.
Marquise.
Hollywood Brown. I'll just call him Hollywood. I don't know what it is today, but I can't. And then how do they use Rashee Rice? I mean, he's a very reliable receiver. Yeah. He doesn't have the speed of these other two guys, but how do you use him?
Well, I think it's going to open up the middle for somebody like him because he's got enough speed that he can get to that second level, get past the linebackers. No linebacker is going to be able to cover him. So if the D-backs are covering the burners, as you're calling them, it's going to open up the middle for him. It's going to open the middle for Kelce. Hopefully it's going to open up the middle for Smith-Schuster. I think it's very possible that they could run a five wide receiver set with Kelce being the fifth one and just totally blow the minds of all the defenses that are playing.
I mean, you're looking at, too, the guys that are still behind that front three in the wide receiving core. Justin Watson, who's been a very good third down, get a hard few yards sort of receiver for the Chiefs. Juju Schuster-Smith or Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman still on the team. You've got some veterans back there that know how to make plays and work with Patrick Mahomes.
It's exciting because this year more than the last few, they have so many options with that passing offense. If all these guys stay healthy, how does a defensive coordinator game plan for that?
Josh, there's your key right there. If they stay healthy.
That is, we know that it's a war of attrition in the NFL.
It is, and that war of attrition is so vital to a team. That's where the Chiefs have the upper hand because they draft for depth and they trade for depth, and the depth is on this team. At least we think it is anyway. Yeah. That has yet to be tested.
I think when we were sitting here last year, we were probably saying, who does Patrick Mahomes throw the ball to besides Travis Kelce? Because there were a lot of ifs on that on that roster this year is how is he going to get the ball to everybody that supposedly can do everything that they need to do. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, Ned, and get your opinion on is there's been a lot of talk over the last few weeks about Travis Kelce and how much longer he will play. And he said today he thinks he's got a couple more years in him. But the Chiefs have already signed Noah Gray to a nice extension. What are your thoughts on that?
Noah Gray is an outstanding a portion of that depth. That's what you're talking about, a depth at tight end. Well, who knows? You don't know what the physical condition. Kelsey's 34 years old. He has, what bothers me a little bit about him, he's had his mind distracted during the spring and the summer with going all over the world with his young lady friend and all this sort of thing and being part of all these concerts and all the publicity and so forth and so on. What kind of an effect does that have on him? Does that take away from his football concentration? Who knows? You don't know how the human mind works. But in terms of his physical well-being, Kelce is a big guy. He is strong. He has taken a load of punishment over the years he's been in college at Cincinnati and in the pros with the Chiefs. How much of a physical value has that taken away from him? And that all is an unknown. I think it probably has to have some, whether or not he plays another year after this, whether or not he's able to get through this year without an injury. Again, these are all unknown factors.
Sorry, Joe. These are some of those things that the decision oftentimes gets made for the player if they don't make it for themselves.
That's exactly
soon.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So while he's looking better, while he seems up to the task now, going okay, physically, I've seen so many players where 1 year they are the height of their craft, and then the next year they're almost completely out of it. Yeah. And it can be very sudden. It might not be one particular hit that you see that does the damage. But it's a lot of these guys. Like I said, the decision gets made for them.
What do you think about this, Josh? I mean, what do you think? All the talk about Travis Kelce and retirement and where he's going to go and Hollywood and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think he's looking to his future post-football. I think that he's done amazing things in the NFL, and I think that he wants to help the Chiefs put that stamp on history and get a three-peat, and I bet if they win the Super Bowl this year, he retires. Because he's got a lot of stuff going for him outside of it, not just the Taylor Swift thing, but he's a funny guy. He was on Saturday Night Live, and his comedic timing is pretty good for somebody who's not an actor. And he's going to get opportunities. I mean, he could be the next Brian Bosworth and do really cheesy action movies if he wanted to. So
here's one of the keys to that, and I love that. And there's some truth to that. What are we going to do without that NFL money? Of course, he gets the retirement pay, but what are we going to do without that money? Do you make money? You don't know what money is.
Yeah, he's doing fine money-wise.
Well, I mean, he and his brother just signed a $100 million deal for their
podcast.
For their podcast, and I said that the whole Austin Powers going to $100 million.
Guys, I do a podcast, and I've got to pay $100 million.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, what Ned's saying about the attrition. I mean, the tight end position is a lot harder than. Physically, I think, than a wide receiver position because you're expected to block, and you're blocking 300-pound defensive linemen a lot of times. So you're getting beat up a lot more as as a tight end than you are as a wide receiver. And he has been able to perform like a wide receiver from the tight end position. And so at a certain point, he's probably thinking, man, I'm tired of waking up hurting every day. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if he retires at the end of this year.
Interesting. What are your odds on that, Ned?
I would say it's more than 50-50. I think he has an ego involvement, too, that would carry him through for at least one more year with the team. I think he plays in 2025, if he's physically able to.
Yeah, I think he continues if injuries don't get in the way. But like you said, it's a lot of punishment at the tight end. Those guys in the middle of the field, way more of those hits from linebackers than corners. You know, those wide receivers getting tackled by corners. Most of those corners don't want to tackle, so it's those are softer contacts. So he's been getting bullied, beat up, but and last year you can say maybe he showed a little bit of sign of slowing down, and he still was one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in the NFL last year. So even him at a slightly reduced from his prime is still going to be pretty darn good.
It's true.
All right, we're about 40 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show. Till then, you got us. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
While we were away, we were talking about 17.5 years. That's what the Chiefs-aholic got. And how crazy little time you get for robbing a bank. I mean, it just seems like you should get more for that.
Well, I understand that in that sentence there's no probation, so he can't get off for any good behavior or anything like that. 17 and a half years is a pretty good amount of time.
Yeah, but he robbed a lot of banks, though, didn't he?
That's why he gets no probation out of this, or no free time.
Because typically it's like 3 to 5, isn't it, for a bank? Just if you went in and robbed a bank, 3 to 5 years. It's kind of surprising to me.
I know someone that robbed 27.
Yeah?
Before he got caught.
How much time did he get?
10 years in prison.
10 years.
Jeez.
And I bet he got a book deal out of that.
I'm surprised he didn't.
Yeah. Well, I just think, we had the Casey Wolf was in town last week. He was at Hy-Vee.
Yeah.
And I just think, how ticked off does that guy got to be? Didn't you go to jail? No, I'm not that guy. I'm the Casey Wolf. Yeah. That's the Casey-holic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to keep these guys straight. But I think he's got to, he's just a dressed-up fan that makes money off of being a dressed-up fan. So that's pretty cool for him.
It's kind of like an influencer.
Yeah,
he's famous for being famous.
Yeah, famous for being famous. All right, we talked a lot about the offense. There was a rebuilding year on the defensive side of the ball this year. The Chiefs had one of the best, if not the best, secondaries in all of football last year, which had been a real sore point for them. Mm-hmm. We sit here. This is, I think, our 5th season that we've been doing this together, 5th or 6th. And one of the things you and I always talk about, Ned, is that, the secondary is not going to be any good. And this year they're rebuilding. What do you think?
And they'll probably have a few soft spots in them, but there's a long way to go. 17 games to play and probably the playoffs and so forth and so on. They'll improve. These are all good athletes. You don't get drafted by teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, who, number 1, draft, and then number 2, make deals around the NFL to bring in top quality. These are remarkably good athletes. So if there is any doubt about how they play or what they're going to do, it'll be resolved somewhere along the line. They'll be okay.
Yeah. They don't have a lot of depth in their linebacking core this year. They actually only have 2 backup linebackers this year.
Well, I'm concerned about Nick Bolton. He did not play at all, to my knowledge, in the preseason. And he has to get in there, and he's up against a pretty good little ball club tonight. And he's one of the best of the linebackers, if not the best. But, again, you have really good, talented athletes, and they are tough. And they also have that level of pride. I don't care if they're pros and they get the paycheck and all that. They have a level of pride about them. They know what they're going after, and that figures into the mix in every single aspect of it.
Chiefs rebuilt that wide receiving core. We've been talking about that. They have... On the roster, they have 9 wide receivers. Now, we do have one of those we have 2 that are on the injured reserve right now. But when you look at that and you have to put together a roster, Alec, you have to, if you're going to carry that many people at that position, that means somebody else is spared. And when you look at the Chiefs roster, they are not deep in the secondary and they're not deep in the linebacking core.
So you just show your confidence in the guys at the top, and you're hopeful that you're able to rotate between maybe some base formations versus nickel and giving your extra corners rest when they come out versus, your backup linebackers covering some of that when they're in. But, yeah, when you want to cover with that many receivers, you have to make cuts here and there. But, that's what the practice squad's there for. They've got guys ready to bring up should an injury arise. But, the defense is going to be interesting to see tonight. I'll be very curious to watch. Last year they did have some issues stopping the run, but we'll see if that problem carries over. Maybe they got that shirt up a little better this year or not. Yeah. You lose your top corner. You still have Trent McDuffie in there, who's an all-pro at what he does, but an all-pro on the inside, so I'll be very interested to see how what he looks like this year now, because he's kind of their top guy in that defensive secondary, but his best role has been on slot blitzes and slot coverage, and I would highly doubt the Chiefs would want to move him to the outside because he's an all-pro at what he did on the inside as a nickel corner, as like a slot corner. So McDuffie will be interesting to watch tonight, and then see how they respond against a very tough challenge.
Alec, my focus is going to be on the O-line, and on the left side of that O-line where Kingsley Suamataia is going to get the start. He is a rookie. He's a rookie going up against a veteran defensive crew that's coming in. The left side last year was the vulnerable side for Patrick Mahomes. Well, they put in the big kid who they drafted very high, and Suamataia, who I think played at Kansas State, if I'm not mistaken, does have a lot of ability. Big. I also think he may be, and I'll have to go back in the roster and look, he may be a Kansas City high school product too, like Blue Spring or Blue Valley or one of those places over on the Kansas side. Anyway, that's beside the point. He's getting a rookie start against a veteran defensive team that's among the best in pro football. That is the key, I think, tonight. How much can he protect Patrick Mahomes?
And I would imagine they'll slide some stuff his way because, well, about the only defense you could argue was better than the Chiefs last year was the Ravens. And statistically, the Ravens were a statistically better defense. So, yes, a very tough challenge for this new wide receiver room and a redone offensive line. Going to have their work cut out for them because it's a Ravens team like Kansas City that's returning quite a bit of what they had last year, and what both these teams had last year was very, very good.
Josh, George Karlaftis goes into his third season with the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you expect a big jump from him this year?
I don't know if I expect a big jump from him. I mean, he's been playing at such a high level.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate. If there is a big jump, then we're in for something really special.
Yeah.
Because that guy is super talented. And I think he, with Chris Jones, creates such a huge threat that if Karlaftis gets better, then wow, that's an exciting thought, honestly. I think he maintains where he is, though. I mean, again, unless he gets hurt. But, yeah, he's pretty top-notch already.
Well, you list those names that are on the defensive side of the ball, Ned, that are right there in the trenches. Karlaftis, Noddy, Chris Jones, and Mike Dana. That's a pretty good group.
And they also have played very little in the exhibition season. That's the way Andy Reid wanted it. He may have had those defensive players out there for a session or two like the offense, but they're so valuable, you don't risk them in games that don't mean anything at all. Jones especially, he's a guy who is, I think he's 30, 31, somewhere around there, and he's had this nagging groin problem for years. It's not something new. He had to sit out a few of the practice sessions because of it. But that's plagued him over the years. He's a big guy, and he likes to push off on being an edge rusher, and he will pay the price for that. Now, how much he's able to withstand that kind of an injury, which will slow him up. But Karlaftis has played very well. It's really hard to believe that he can play above what he did last year. He was in that backfield all the time and making a nuisance out of himself. So they have some key defensive weapons on disrupting. Now, can they disrupt a quick quarterback like a Lamar Jackson? That's the key right here, what they can do.
Omenihu, too, is in that lineup, too. He's a third stringer, though, this season, but he was the guy that came in and was able to spell Chris Jones and make some big plays, too.
And remember, he was suspended for the first 6 games last year.
Oh, that's right.
And that's when the Chiefs faltered just a bit, so he will be in there this year.
Guy that adds a lot to that team. And to answer your question, Chris Jones, hard to believe he's 30 years old. Just 30. Old man. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about baseball, and I do want to talk to you about our Missouri State Bears because they had an interesting opener. We'll talk about that. We're about 27 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show right here on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
Yep, and we've got the pregame show coming up for you in 22 minutes right here On 104.7 The Cave, Ned Reynolds, Josh Roberts, Alex Scott. I am Joe Westen, and we are talking football. We've been talking about the Chiefs, but let's talk about our Missouri State Bears a little bit because they almost pulled off an upset.
Would have been rated as an upset, but in watching that game, Missouri State had every chance to win and probably should have won. They had 112 yards and penalties, and that's what cost them. That's what cost in a 29-24 loss. That is what cost them right there. That key ingredient. Now you're playing on the road before, guys, get this, 26,000 fans in Missoula, Montana. Bears have never played before that big a crowd before. That's how they draw out in Montana. Both Montana and Montana State they're both D1AA or FCS, but they're the big dogs in the state, and everybody goes to watch them play. And when they play each other, they talk about Oregon State that doesn't exist anymore, but that used to be the Civil War. Well, this is the war to end all wars when those teams play. Anyway, that's beside the point. Montana was a very good team, runner-up to national champion this past season, and probably will be very much in the hunt this season. But Missouri State's good. They have a lot of weapons about them. They have had some injuries to the offensive line, and that could come back to haunt them when they play a D1A like Ball State. Ball State's a Mid-America Conference team, but they're good. As we mentioned earlier, Carson Steele of the Kansas City Chiefs played for them for 3 years before transferring to UCLA, so they have quality athletes out there. But it's a good test, and the Bears have a good chance to win this one, in my opinion, in Muncie, Indiana. Then they get Tennessee Martin, which is a very, very good football team. Then on to their conference for the final time, the Missouri Valley Conference, which is the SEC of 1AA football.
It's brutal.
It is.
So what do you think of the Bears this year? Do you think this first game is a highlight or a low light for them?
Oh, it's a highlight. Certainly a highlight. A loss is never really considered a highlight, but by the same token, who are you playing? As a matter of fact, they get a pretty good shot because they opened with the runner-up to national champion, and they close the season with the national champion, South Dakota State, which is a conference game, obviously. But the fact is, I think they played so well, and very few expected them to really be in the game, and they were very much in the game. I think it's a highlight, and I think they will do well. It's given them a lot of confidence to come back, and they know they can play with these guys, so let's show them.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about baseball because that is still going on. It's September. Wake me when September's over, and we start the playoffs and everything. And everything's starting to kind of shake out. It does not look like the Cardinals are going to make it this year.
It'll be a significant challenge for them to do that. They're 10 games out of first place with 22 to go. That's a monumental task because not only do the Cardinals have to win, the other teams have to lose. And that's pretty unrealistic. Furthermore, the Chicago Cubs are in front of the Cardinals, so the Cardinals have to surpass them. And then in the wild card hunt, same situation, except the Cubs and the New York Mets are also in front of them, so that's even more of a difficult task. I think it'll be awfully difficult for the Cardinals, but nonetheless, I guess you can formulate your team for next year by starting to play some of the younger players, and they have. They've stuck Luke and Baker in there to play a little bit, knowing fully well that Goldschmidt may I can't see him coming back next year. He's a free agent, and he can make his own deals, unless the Cardinals say, hey, we'll pay you for 1 year to come back and tutor this kid. But be that as it may, does that allow them to, are they allowed from a depth standpoint to have that kind of luxury of having a player teaching another one how to play? It all depends on what the front office thinking is, and I defy anyone to tell me how that front office thinks.
They have 1% chance of making the playoff, so they still have a slight chance.
It's more than I've got.
A lot of plane wrecks, and maybe they can make it. So. But on the brighter side of that, Kansas City Royals, 85% chance of making it to the playoffs. I mean, they're virtually a lock at this moment to make
for the wild card. Yes, to catch the Cleveland Guardians, it'll take some doing to do. They're 4.5 back of them, and so are the Minnesota Twins for that fact. So that's who the Royals are playing next, the Minnesota Twins. So that series coming up this weekend will be telltale as to where each team is placed. But I think both of them, both the Twins and the Royals, have a great chance to be wild card teams.
That is exactly the way that it's shaked out right now. I mean, everybody, when you get past the Royals at 85% chance. Everybody else in the American League is in single digits and their percentage of chance to be able to make it to the playoffs. We have a good race in the American League East. The Yankees and the Orioles keep rotating back and forth between a half game out. That, I think there could be, it's the Guardians have kept everybody at a arm's length all season long, just enough. But that is a good race, and it could turn into something in the last week with it. Both the Royals and the Twins, as you said, Ned, they have the possibility of coming back and winning that division. Over in the National League, when you look at that, it's 7 games back for the Atlanta Braves over what's that team that you like?
Not this year. I can't see them doing it this year. Philadelphia, which has the history of blowing it down the stretch like they did in 64 with a 6.5 game lead with 12 games to go and lost. So you never say it's in the bag for Philadelphia, never. But by the same token, Philadelphia has a pretty good lineup.
99.9% chance of making it.
That's because the Atlanta Ball Club is good but not great, and they're not great because of injuries, not because they don't have the talent, but the injury factor has really hurt them. So I think Philadelphia probably wins that division.
And there's a race in the National League West. I mean, the Padres, the Diamondbacks are both within striking distance, excuse the pun, and could take the Dodgers down.
It could. It is possible, and I love the way the Padres play. Mike Shildt, that's Mike Shildt style baseball. What they do, they're a contact team. Yes, they do have power hitters. Manny Machado and people like that can hit for the long ball, and Tatis isn't even in there, and he's a long ball hitter. But they play contact baseball. They put runners on base and bring those runners around with significant hitting to the and hitting runs and playing where nobody hitting the ball where nobody is. It's Mike Shildt style, which when you look at him on the Padres bench, you say, why is he wearing a Padres uniform? Didn't he used to manage the Cardinals? That's exactly right. He used to. Thank you. I like the Padres ball club. I think they'll be in there in one regard.
You know who I like? That Chicago White Sox team.
Yeah. I mean, you can buy them right now, Joe.
Are we looking at a historic season here?
Hey,
there are 109 losses.
And,
what's the record?
You would think it's the New York Mets who had 47 and 120. I think it was 120 losses for the year, and that was their first year, and they were an expansion team. The Chicago White Sox have been around since 1900.
Yeah.
My God, what has happened to this franchise?
They got 21 games to go, so they could tie that record. They can't break it, but they could tie it.
Wow. Come on, Chicago. Do it for America.
Do it for me. We want to see you guys do something special. I actually think they have more than that. 41, we'll see. We'll see what happens here with all of it.
You guys are negative thinkers. Come on.
Well,
so are the White Sox.
My whole thing is if you're going to be that bad, just lean into it.
Well, I think they have.
Historically bad.
I think they've leaned in way.
I think they have too.
Way into it. It's only 3 teams so far that have been completely eliminated. The Marlins and the Colorado Rockies are also out of it, too. So, I mean, what's your pick, Ned? Who do you think? Who's going to take the American League East?
I can't see the Yankees not taking it. I know the Yankees and the Baltimore Orioles will probably put on a great stretch run, but the Yankees have the power to get it done. They have a great mix in their lineup. I like their ball club. Like Baltimore, too, but I think it's the Yankees who win it.
Pitching's been a real problem for them this year. Their bullpen's not very good, and the starting pitching is really inconsistent once you get past Garrett Cole, and he hurt his calf the other night. What's your take? Who wins the American League East, Alec?
I'm going Baltimore. I think that team's been a little more steady. I think New York streaks, and when they're going, they are really tough to beat. And then they'll dive a little bit. Now their highs have been much higher than their lows, but I think Baltimore's been a little more steady throughout it. So I'm going to say Baltimore.
What about you?
How many do they have games against each other left? Baltimore and the Yankees?
That I don't know.
I would have to think they do within the division, but that's just a guess.
I think the Yankees are going to do it because I think Judge has had he's approaching that historic number, and I think he shakes off his slump and ends up getting 63, 64 home runs.
Well, he is a streak hitter, and he could do that. Yeah.
They have a very favorable schedule down the road. They get Chicago for 3. Now they'll be playing Kansas City for 3, and Kansas City's played them tough.
Yeah.
Where are those games?
They will be in New York. Okay. So, and then the Boston, they'll be playing the Red Sox. Now, I will say this: I, as a Red Sox hater, I will tell you, I think the Red Sox are going to be a team to watch next year. I think they're going to be a very, very good baseball team. I do wish that they would drop those yellow and blue uniforms. They're horrible. They're heinous. And then Seattle, Oakland, then they play Baltimore and Pittsburgh to wrap up the season.
Now, those Baltimore and Pittsburgh games, are they at Yankee Stadium?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Yeah, then I think
But they do have to make a West Coast trip.
Yankees are going to take it.
Okay. All right. There you go. I'm going to go with Alec, even though I'm a Yankees fan. I really believe that that it's going to go to Baltimore down the stretch because the Yankees have played so inconsistently. Do you think, let me ask you guys really quickly, do you think there's any changes in the other divisions? Do you think the Guardians hold out? Do you think the Dodgers hold out?
I think the Guardians, because they are a good team, have been through a slump. We talked about this earlier. Every team in baseball has its peaks and valleys. The good teams have higher peaks to reach, and the bad teams have the deeper valleys to have to emerge from. And the Guardians are pretty good. They've got a good lineup. I think they hold on to win that division, and they could be a force because they're a streaky team. They could be a force in the playoffs as well.
When we come back, we'll give you our picks for tonight's game. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
Will that guy ever shut up? It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. Joe Westen, Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts. We're about 5 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show. Mitch Holtis, Dana Hughes, the whole crowd of thousands of people that appear on that pregame show. Danny Israel, Art Haynes. So, it is our time to make fools of ourselves and make our picks for this week's game. We'll start with you, Mr. Reynolds.
All righty, I will go with the KC Chiefs. I know that's going out on a limb, guys. They're a 3-point pick in this game, and there's a reason why they are a 3-point pick. That is the home field advantage in the NFL and the way the smart guys out in Vegas make their point spreads. 3-point pick for the Chiefs. I think they beat that. I'm picking the Chiefs to win 24-. I'm going to pick a hybrid score here. We'll say 18, 24-18. I think the Chiefs win over the Baltimore Ravens. Be a pretty good game, hard-hitting game. I just hope both those teams, you don't want to pick one over the other, escape without any serious injuries.
So you're going under tonight. It's 46.5.
I'm taking under.
On the over-under.
You got chocolate chips on this one?
No.
Okay.
I don't have any chocolate chips. That's why.
Oh, okay. I got you.
I've been going back and forth throughout because that home field advantage counts for something, but I kind of like last year when I picked Philadelphia to beat Kansas City when the rematch happened because someone has a sour taste in their mouth and someone's been celebrating. So for tonight, I think I am going to go Baltimore. I was fascinated in last year's playoff matchup when Baltimore had such a strong running game. Kansas City's weakness on defense was stopping the run, and Baltimore ran the ball 5 times. I'm thinking they might have learned a little something. They're at least going to try. They want to show off their new toy, Derrick Henry, just like Chiefs want to show off all their new toys. So tonight, I think Baltimore just wants it a little more. I'm going to go Baltimore, but I'm going to go 26-24. I think it's...
So you're going over tonight?
Apparently I am.
That's 50.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But they're not. Yeah, okay.
What about you, Josh?
Well, I think when I first saw the schedule, I said the Chiefs would be 12-5. And I think I predicted, in my mind, I thought they would lose this first game. So I think I'm going to go with Baltimore. It's going to be close, but I think it's going to be like 28-24.
So you're going over?
I'm going over, but I think Baltimore is going to win this one.
We had a rep in today, and he's from Kansas City, and he was telling us that people were lined up to get into Arrowhead on a Thursday morning.
Oh, gee. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, I'm taking the day off so I can go tailgate all day and see.
Some of those people won't even make it into the stadium.
Yes, you're exactly right. Okay, I'm going to pull a Costanza on you guys because my gut tells me that Baltimore is going to win this game.
You mean to tell me this is 3
No,
against
wait,
1?
All
right. Okay.
I'll
back off.
I'm pulling a Costanza on this because my gut tells me Baltimore will win, but my gut is typically wrong. Okay. So I'm going against my gut.
Oh, okay.
And I'm picking Kansas City to win this game, and I think it will be a high-scoring affair. So I'm picking Kansas City to win 32-17.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm picking a dominant performance tonight because my gut says close game, Baltimore wins.
Right.
So I'm going completely opposite of my gut this year. That's what I think.
I like that.
Who do you think is a big impact player tonight, Ned? Quickly.
For the Chiefs, I would think the impact, well, you've got to go with the obvious one, Patrick Mahomes. I think he's able to pick apart the Baltimore defense, escape the Baltimore pass rush, and have a big night.
What about you, Alec?
I'm going to go with Karlaftis. All that attention goes to Jones. Someone else in that D-line's got to win in one-on-one, so that's my pick.
Josh?
Derrick Henry, roll tide.
All right. I'm picking Carson Steele.
Carson Steele.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be back on the air a week from Sunday when we have the Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. That game will start at 3:25, so that means we'll be on the air at 1 o'clock. Thanks to Corbin Campbell, Brian Tyndall, Mike the intern, and Nicholas, our Nick Fury guy. We'll see you next couple of weeks. It's Ned Talk.
Good.
7, the Kid.